Good morning.
Good
Welcome,
morning,
YouTube.
everybody. So exciting. How wonderful to be able to do a virtual event and have all these people join us. And then, of course, our wonderful guests as well. And this first wonderful guest is one that we are very familiar with here at Predictable Revenue. Of course, that makes us no less excited to be able to have him as our very first guest of the day. Aaron Ross, of course, you all know and love him. If you're here watching Predictable Revenue content, you know Aaron. You know that he is the real deal. He is the co-founder, of course, of Predictable Revenue. He's the author From Impossible to Inevitable, which is ranked the 8th best startup book of all time. Pretty cool. And Predictable Revenue, of course, called the Sales Bible of Silicon Valley, which is about sales systems that helped Salesforce.com, Twilio, Zora, and other companies create billions. Aaron is married with 9 children, half through adoption, and he's co-CEO, of course, as I mentioned, of predictablerevenue.com. That's us, if you weren't aware. And also, how cool is it to be able to speak to a best-selling author and get to ask him any questions you might have about a best-selling book? I think that's pretty cool. And today's your chance. So those of you guys that are in the Zoom room, welcome. We're so excited to have your live questions. And those of you that are in the chat, please get those fingers warmed up so that you can type those questions in, and we'll get to those as well. But yeah, welcome, guys. Welcome, Aaron.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. If you're, it's your morning. For me, it's afternoon. I'm calling from the UK. So see some smiling faces. Good to see y'all. Thanks, Sarah, Colin, Julia, Vero. Lots of cool. All right. Sarah, I think this is kind of your show. I mean, our show, the show.
The show. Yeah. I think
Where do
what
you
I'll
want to start?
Okay. For those who maybe have not heard of the book, Aaron, why don't you give us a little bit of a blurb about both the From Impossible to Inevitable and Predictable Revenue books. And then what I'll do is go around the room of the people that have joined us for the live AMA and go around and get your guys' questions. And then we can just keep cycling through. And as we get questions in the chat, we can pepper those in as well. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's good. Sure. And then, a lot of people have read the books. A lot of people have not read the books. But the first book called Predictable Revenue came out 2011, about 10 years ago. Right, a lot of detail around how I created that outbound prospecting, outbound sales machine for Salesforce.com. Back when I started Salesforce, when it was about a $25 million company, 150, couple hundred people. And as you know, that outbound system, and the book called it Cold Calling 2.0, because I really couldn't think of a better term, helped double Salesforce.com's growth. So that's the Predictable Revenue book. By the way, everyone focuses on the outbound part, but one of the sections I actually still really like and tell at least managers to read and share. There's a section on transparent sales compensation, right? Involving your sales team in at least editing or designing some sales comp. So there's a lot of hidden gems. I feel like a lot of people did not get into that book. And then there's a sequel called From Impossible to Inevitable, which I have up here on the mantle. Came out and updated 2019, a couple of years ago. And it's actually been called Book Authority, the #1 SaaS book. So someone else called it the 8th best startup book, but it's really a growth Bible for founders, entrepreneurs, and C-levels. So it's especially a lifesaver if you're kind of a few $100,000 in revenue to maybe 10 million. But companies, like Cisco, there's any size of company, there's a lot of good lessons for it. And it's usually like the first book I go to if you are like a growth executive, not just a sales person. Just fun fact, got 10 kids, live in Edinburgh, moved here from Los Angeles last year, just before lockdown started. And for family reasons, right? Just wants a different variety of cultures and expose the kids to. And the range is, we got a 4-year-old all the way up to 22.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, I'm going to go around pretty much alphabetically through the guys that are sitting in here with us live. So the first person, if you're ready to ask your question, LA, go ahead. LA Asnar.
We're gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah. If not, I can cycle. I'll come back to you. I'll give you a couple seconds. Okay, we're gonna go. Oh, LA, you unmuted. Okay. You kept your slot. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm having network problems. So if you
okay.
can jump onto the next person, please.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we'll come back to you, LA. Okay, my next person down the line is R2.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi.
Greetings from Minnesota, Minneapolis. Originally from Finland, actually, but yeah, good to see all of you guys here. Yeah, I have a few questions. Let's start with the easy one, probably. So, Aaron, what happened first? You were a star, and then you wrote the book, or you wrote the book and then you became a star?
I'm a star. Okay. I would say in terms of like building an audience, rather than the word star, let's say building an audience as well as the book happened kind of together. So before I published the book, I worked on it for about, I feel like 5 years ish, because I started really doing blogging at Salesforce. And this is funny. It's funny to say now, but at salesforce.com in like the 2000s, blogging was outlawed. You weren't allowed to blog. So I was just privately for myself. And along the way, I just meet people in tech. I don't even remember how at this point, just other like sales managers and people outside Salesforce. And, Salesforce was, growing fast and kind of well known, but not the behemoth it is now. And so I was just kind of meeting people and creating some content as I went. And over, a few years, honestly, at Salesforce and outside Salesforce. And so by the time, let's say around 2010, I actually took a couple days and just took all these blog posts and some other content and drafted the book in maybe 3 days. So it was like 5 years of, creating content, 3 days of drafting or editing to a draft, and then 3 months of tweaking. So, and by the time I published the book, I'd already been talking to people about it. I'd shared PDFs, I'd shared drafts, I just kind of like sent it out. And so the book, when it became published, there wasn't like a big launch.
Okay.
It really was like just telling people and doing webinars around it. So there are two things that helped. One is really focusing on a book that people really enjoyed and got a lot of value of and told their friends about. And I feel like, again, it took 5 years I was creating content, but also talking about it. It's like distilling the ideas down. So anyone who's writing a book or maybe creating content, and so like if you give public talks, that really forces you to kind of test and distill your content down. Because the sales book I would have written in 2006 would have been very different. Like probably a more, like I would say, boring classic sales book. After 5 years of like testing and tweaking and like talking to people, what the book ended up being. So by the time it came out, there's already a bunch of people kind of knew about it and it helped spread the word of mouth. So between like having an audience already and creating a book and having tested it for years until it was like tight together, help build the audience and sell books. So the answer is both at the same time.
Okay, so you already had some name, and then the book was kind of a nice way to summarize what you have been writing and talking about for 5 years, and then that kind of was boosting the whole thing.
The book just accelerated it. So it was already. I like meeting people, and so the book just accelerated it because then it was something. There's both the credibility, but it also packaged it into an easy to read place. It could go further, and I mean, we did a minor update of it like a year or two ago, but still, there's companies it's still out there. It doesn't sell as much as a few years ago, but it just keeps growing on its own. So
yeah.
Nice.
Okay, then.
Sorry, Artu, I'll come back to you for your next question.
Okay,
I do want to make sure everyone gets a chance, but I'm sure we'll get back to you at the top again. Corey, if you have a question, please go ahead. We'll give a couple seconds here for Corey to get going. Going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, Felix, do you have a question?
Hello.
Hey, Felix.
Hi, calling from Barcelona, Spain.
Awesome. Okay. Know a bunch of people there.
So, Aaron, I am currently reading the Sales Development Playbook from Trish Bertuzzi. And then I will start your book, Predictable Revenue. I discovered it via the podcast you had with Colin Katmus. And well, basically, well, this book from Trish I'm liking a lot. I hope I can optimize my skills with your book as well. I recently joined a company, like very small company, a video hosting company called Flow Player. And the strategy that my boss suggested was to bring like 250 people every week into the CRM and then sending those out to an automatic sequence. And with some rate of response that he calculated, he thought that I was going to get the opportunity. And my point of view after reading and seeing some predictable revenue webinars, I discovered that it's not like this. It should be more personalized way, try to discover the pain points about the prospect, etc. And I negotiated with him today to work on less contacts and to be more personalized. Do you think
Sure.
I'm taking the right path to reach my results, or anything else you can help me?
Yeah, well, first, I do think in the early stages, you do need to focus less on volume and more on individual, fewer companies that you kind of like experiment more with. Like, for example, if you're sending something to a few hundred people and you're not getting the responses you want, sending them to a few thousand is not going to help. So, if you pick even 10 companies or 20 companies, and if you can't get something out of 20 companies, then you got to go back to the drawing board and find some other way to get a conversation started. So like start small. There's a lot of channels, there's a lot of ways you can interact, whether it's like LinkedIn, email, the phone, video, pictures. So you got to like find your voice. And I think too, as the world gets busier, the copy paste form of success, and at least in the States, it's a bit different. It's just busier and busier. And internationally, it's still not as overwhelming. But if we find copy paste doesn't work as much, where you just copy what other people done and paste it in. You really have to find your own voice and your own style and your own channel that works for you. So So personalization is one way to think about that. Personalization implies there's one company or person, I'm going to like tweak it for them. I say you want to take also a bit more of a sandbox approach, which is a small number of accounts. Might be 20, it might be 50, it might be 100. Not too many, and you're just really you're working within just that number of companies to find something that works for you before you try to reach out to hundreds or thousands of them.
Okay.
And the other thing I would mention, if it hasn't come up, and the one thing that was missing from the predictable revenue book, once you see it, really is, and this became the beginning of this book, right? It's called Nailing a Niche. It's really thinking about that. Who's the ideal customer? Why would they need you? Messaging. And because I saw that most of the companies struggling with outbound didn't think really through around who their ideal customers were, the messaging, and how to put themselves in their shoes. So start, you can go to fromimpossible.com and get that chapter for free, but I would read that as well. Even before, if you're already reading the sales development playbook, go to read the Untitled Chapter first before even reading the predictable revenue book.
Okay, many thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, it can take months.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's like they want me super immediate results, but I will try to do my best.
Thank you, Felix. Okay, next on the docket, we've got Indre.
Hi, so nice to meet you all. Thanks for allowing me to join the conversations. And I'm calling from Canary Islands,
Nice.
From Spain. I read Predictable Revenue only, and my question was that you just answered actually, if you missed anything in that book that you would add now, or if you changed something since you published it. So this was my main question as well. And I have another question, probably not related directly to the book. Since we are a European-based consulting company helping advising for fundraising, public fundraising in US and in Europe, I see a massive difference while European companies selling to US. Yep. I don't know if you would agree that this is some different approach that we should use while being a European and trying to approach US, SMEs, startups, and companies.
Well, part of what I'll say, I'll start as, it might sound like a broken record, but especially if you're a services company, again, the same nail a niche section from the Impossible book. I mean, there's a reason why that became the first section of the new book, because it's the most common challenge for companies, especially if you're in services or you sell something that's complex. If you find yourself struggling to explain what you do to someone, then read that, the chapter to start there. Europe is different culturally, business-wise, but not that different. I mean, so I think it's really taking the principles that work. I mean, think about the United States in a lot of ways kind of sets the tone primarily in sales and marketing and making money. And then it does trickle out over years, and there might be a 5 or 10 year, in the past, like a 5 or 10 year lag. I think that's shrinking to different parts of Europe, like the UK first, and then like France and Germany, and then Spain. But also, I mean, really what you're looking to do is, especially in services, who really needs you the most, because it's the biggest waste of time in whether it's in sales and marketing, reaching out to people who aren't going to be a fit, never going to buy. They might talk to you, but you're wasting their time and wasting yours. And I feel it takes a lot of experience, insight, confidence, discipline to say, hey, these really are the people who need us the most. And all these people who could use us or should use us, we're just going to ignore and really focus super tight on those ideal customers and the ideal buyers, and to then get to know them so you can kind of think like them. And so you can, that's really like empathy is vital these days. Because especially as the world gets busier, right? There's more channels, more messages, there's more email, like even LinkedIn. For those of you on LinkedIn, people just getting, it's like information overload. And so what helps, outbound still works, but what helps is, again, more specific on who you should reach out to and why, and what are they interested in? Like, if you could read their minds, what would they be feeling and thinking is the goal.
Yeah, I understand. I think that there's more rejection from first approach. Let's say when we do calls in Europe, it's way easier for us. Even like all Europe, Israel, Switzerland, any country we take. Okay.
Yeah, well, in the States, again, it's like a high, because there's a lot more sales and marketing, and people just have a smaller window of attention. And so how do you stand out? I think, to me, a lot of it, I think, in going back towards finding your voice, finding style, right? So it's not about it. There's personalization, which is you change what you're saying to fit who you're reaching out to. But then there's also adding personality, which is letting who you are as a person or company shine through. So you don't seem like the same. Everyone just seems the same. So there's like the more you can add humanity to what you're doing, which is also kind of knowing who you're reaching out to and having more, I'll just use the word style in the way you do it, whether that's through email or a video or sending a letter, however, or a phone call, whatever your techniques are. It is going to be harder in the States, it's busier. So it kind of forces you to be sharper about it.
Okay, thank you very much. It was useful.
Thanks, Aaron. Okay, Sandra, if you have a question, you can go ahead. Hi, Sandra. I see your video popping up, but your mic is still off. There you go. Perfect.
Hey, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to throw out there, Aaron. I started my first SDR job because of your book. And I want to say thank you. My company hired me because of your book. And I really didn't know a lot about being an SDR, and your team helped me through the process. Between Colin and Sarah and the rest of the team, they were able to help me learn how to be an SDR and how to succeed. And I've read both of your books, and I'm continuing to thrive, and I appreciate all of you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything, because I wouldn't be where I am today without you guys.
Sure, Sandra. Yeah, thanks very much.
That's awesome, Sandra.
Yeah, that's
good
amazing.
To see you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, Stas, if you have a question, go ahead.
Good evening for me. Good morning to you, I think. Hello from
Hi.
St. Petersburg, Russia. Nice to
Stas.
see you all. And thank you so much for what you are doing. And I don't know, we spoke now regarding what was in the past, what is happening now. What do you think, Aaron, regarding what will happen in the future? Will artificial intelligence or robots replace all the things that salespeople are doing now?
Somebody added Kenny to the chat.
I'm sorry, I should I actually am a robot. It's too late. This is just all
okay.
Well, yeah, one sense, I don't know if you've seen even things like the deep fakes, like video, even see with the Tom Cruise, right? There's all kinds of mimicry and fake people, automated stuff, and that's all going to expand and keep going. So AI is not going to replace people. It's not going to replace salespeople. You're always going to need salespeople or people in the sales process. Shape of it will change, SDRs and such. What I really believe is, though, stepping back, that we've had the COVID pandemic that's winding down, we hope, but it's really accelerated and exposed a growing emotional pandemic, right? An energy pandemic, which is out there. And there's a bunch of other trends that have contributed to this. And, executives, whether, startup CEOs or C-levels or salespeople or enterprise executives, all seem to feel this. And it's a consequence of things like information overwhelm, choice overwhelm, more screen time. That's why the pandemic helped accelerate, because now it's just on screens with people more often. Lack of human interaction, like in person. There's just other things going on, but really, like, we're not emotionally, mentally equipped to deal with the world these days, and it's showing up especially in our teens. So the consequences in the sales world is that a lot of the people you're talking to have a lot less energy or interest in dealing with things. They just, even to understand what you're saying. It's almost like if you're exhausted, are you really you're not gonna put any energy into looking at the next email. You're just gonna ignore it, right? Or if in a project, you're going through a proposal, the more it feels like work, the less likely it's going to move through the process, right? So how do you take out as much friction as you can around the communication, getting to know someone, a proposal, project? Like, friction is the enemy. So that's why you see trends towards things like user-based pricing or, more freemium. We're just trying to reduce the friction because people don't have the energy to deal with things beyond like the bare minimum. So that's really the trend, the main trend I see, and the things I think about is how to help people, the impact of this emotional pandemic, energy pandemic, which isn't going to go, it'll feel a little bit better once people can go back to work or see each other in person, but it's actually only going to get worse at a kind of big picture level over the next coming years because of all the kind of underlying trends pushing us this way.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thomas, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Thomas. I'm Italian, but I'm working in Spain, and I would like to thank you all for what
Spain
you're doing.
Again, Spain's all over the place.
Yeah, but I would like to thank you all for what you're doing because you're rocking it, and thank you very much. And thank you, Aaron, for your book because I think that opened my mind when my boss suggested me to write it, and just thank you. Then I'm working as an SDR in a SaaS company. We're not a pure SaaS, but well, we are on the way to it. And I have a question about the fact that in the book, in the sales funnel, you were talking about having or achieving a 9% response rate, right? And I'm struggling with the email aspect because we are a niche and our market in Italy is no more than 400 companies. So it will be difficult, very hard to send 50 or 100 emails per day and get a 9% response rate. Also a lower percentage. So how would you manage it in a very small niche?
So in the book, like response rates can vary all over the place, and they have gone down in general. That's one part we didn't update. Averages, like big averages might be, low single digit percentages in terms of response rates. Based on like niche and different companies might get higher. So, there's no reason to feel good or bad based on comparing yourself to the book, because it might be completely irrelevant to your situation. But when you have, in a few hundred accounts is still a pretty big market. I mean, we have a client where one salesperson might have big enterprise clients of like their target might be 5 accounts. Their target, like big ones. So again, it's not about sticking to the numbers in the book. It's saying, hey, the principle is if you send a certain number, the goal is a certain number of activities, and some might be in email, phone calls, LinkedIn, I won't say WhatsApp, but the different channels could vary based on the market you're in. And you're looking for some sort of response rate and to measure that and try to get a sense of what that might be for you, for your market. And then how many of those lead to calls. Everyone's funnel is a bit different, and it can vary country to country. The United States tends to have more challenging conversion rates just because of the volume. Internationally, it tends to be easier. So a lot of it is saying, all right, take that as a starting point. I can go talk to some people, but over, probably 3 to 4 months, I'm really focused on outbound and kind of experimenting and measuring. I'll kind of find out what my own funnel looks like. And to see, because, sort of like there's a million cookbooks, diet books, food systems. Just because someone else is keto doesn't mean that you should be. That might be horrible for you, or paleo or vegan, this, that, the other. Like, you're going to find your own kind of like food system. In this case, you're outbound, like what your funnel looks like. With the idea, again, you're trying to find the right companies, the right people, why they should care, to get meetings, right? To talk to them on the phone, or at least meet in person, I guess, hopefully at some point. Like, what does that take for you? And then how, if you can do that 1 time or 3 times, how can you do that 30 times? Everyone's gonna be a little bit different. By the way, the book's supposed to be out. I think the Kindle version of the Predictable Revenue is out in Spanish now, and we're just waiting for the physical version any week now to come out in Spanish.
Nice. One more question from our live bunch here, and then I'll go to Colin to ask a couple of the ones that have come in through the chat. So Pramod, ask your question, please.
Sure. Thanks so much. Hi, Aaron. Big fan. I'm calling from India. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company called TrueMe. I follow your blogs regularly, and I have, of course, read your book. I read it 1 year back. My question, a specific question, is on the comp structure of the SDRs. Okay, so do we base it on number of meetings, demos arranged, or do we link it to the business acquired? And if yes, how do we do that? Number one. And second adjunct question is, what typically would it be? How many times, the salary of the SDR? Just an input. Our ticket size is low, and our number of customers is high. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to put a link in the chat to the compensation article that will help you.
Sure.
So this there's a section in the Predictable Revenue book about comp, and I took that and kind of expanded it. Again, in the Predictable Revenue book, there's a lot on like outbound. There's a lot on comp design. I mentioned, transparent comp design. I think it's interesting because a lot of people focus on the outbound, but there's a lot of management side in there. In fact, the 2 books that really influenced me the most at Salesforce and leading Predictable Revenue are completely different. One was the Toyota Way, right, engineering and lean manufacturing, and the other was Wooden, by John Wooden, who really kind of my management mentor. But those 2 books both became very influential. A lot of the Toyota Way engineering system was kind of like the outbound side, and a lot of the management philosophy around kind of like working with the team, and it was kind of like a lot of the second half of the book. But the comp fits in that. So I would say start with the comp, that article, and don't be, I really believe it's better to involve your people in some way. It could be a little bit, it could be a lot, based on your culture in comp design and feedback, to find out, because again, there's some principles that work across most companies, but you always have to tweak it a bit for where you are. And I'm sorry, I don't know if we have time for that second question, or if we're at time here, Sarah.
We are at time. We can go a little bit into the break that we've got scheduled here for the next 15 minutes. I'll probably cap us with like 5 minutes left in between so that we can make sure that we're letting that next speaker in. But yeah, we'll hang out here for a little bit longer. I will, yeah, Pramod, if you can hang on to your second question, and if we make it back to you, then you can ask that second question. If
Sure.
not, pop it into the Slack community, then Aaron can also answer it there. But we'll go to Colin to ask a couple of those questions that have come in through YouTube, Slack, all of those things.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah. All right. So basically, the first one, I don't have a commenter here on this one. I think this one came from our Slack community. So we are a 2-person startup, no fancy tech stack to automate, determine in-market buyers. Cold calling, emailing efforts to date are less than stellar. Target audience is mid-sized enterprise IT. Everyone needs the product, Wi-Fi, but may not realize they need our professional services to design the network, make their life a lot easier. What advice does Aaron have to learn more about the target audience when first-party data, i.e. customers, is not enough?
Yeah, well, if you're only 2 people, sorry, is 2 people at the company or 2 founders?
We are a 2-person startup.
Yeah, I mean, think about like a lot of the books, and again, my guess is the From Impossible to Inevitable book is probably better for you to start with in that nail a niche, and it's kind of like a founder's like growth design book. But the way I describe it too is, I don't know if you have much revenue or not. Like Peter Thiel wrote the book 0 to 1. Like, great. My stuff is often from like 1 to N. So if you already have customers who are paying you and you're making some revenue, it could be a few $100,000, you get something. Especially on the outbound side, you probably want even more than that, 500,000, $1 million, couple million, before you have enough data on the kinds of customers who need you and where to find them to have confidence in outbound. You can do outbound earlier than that, but you can't expect any results. So the fact that if you're a really small company, especially if you're selling to bigger companies, how well do you really know what they need? Yeah, you have a product, you're selling to them, but do you understand, going back to, if they don't see your service is valuable, it's only how well do you know what they need, how you stand out from everything else they're dealing with. And again, companies, you see the value what you do. Do you understand what their other priorities are? Right? Of their top 15 priorities, does yours fall in the top 5 or in like the bottom mid 10? Like, it really has to be near the top for someone to buy something. It takes a lot of work to evaluate, buy, and implement something like that. So I'd say it's like, how do you get out of your own like needs and wants and kind of understand it from the customer's perspective and be realistic with how long it takes to get something off the ground, which is longer than you want.
Perfect. Thanks, Aaron. We got one comment from Jeff Frick. Good to see you, Aaron. Been way too long.
Wow. Yeah, that's going way back. That was Jeff Frick. And by the way, Jeff, if you're still listening, I just got a LinkedIn from Chris Boshensky and Jim Moriarty, because we were working at a company called Pandesic a long time ago in like 1997 to 1999 before I left. That was a whole train wreck of a company. Intel and SAP put in a whole bunch of money, and looking back, they didn't follow any of the rules in the Impossible to Inevitable book.
Right on. We got one from Hibernian Solutions Industrial, and apologies if I butchered that. I'm in machinery sales, not in the tech space. Can the principles in predictable revenue be applied to my sector?
Yeah, it's anytime you have people selling, right? Business to business, and bigger orders, not as a consumer. So consumer tends to be like 1 or 2 calls to close. I mean, if it's bigger ticket, and there's usually maybe multiple people involved with business to business sales. Yeah, and whether you're selling, I don't know, I wouldn't say coupons, but like Q-tips or software. I mean, as long as there's humans involved and there's teams of salespeople selling, the principles can work. Again, no matter who you are, you're gonna have to take them with a grain of salt and say, all right, the book says X, that makes sense, but I'm gonna adapt it and do a little bit differently because I'm in a different situation. So it's not about following it blindly. It's about It's ideas and guidelines for what work for other people. It can work for you as long as you apply it in a way that makes sense to your business and your situation. I feel like, but maybe it's the younger ones too, but everyone is busy. We all want this like, oh, just tell me the 7 steps to success so I don't have to think about it. Can you just make it simple for me? Can you just do it for me? We got a last one.
I've got one more. Sarah, you've got one.
Yeah. Aaron, who is your favorite mentor?
Let's see. Well, I mean, I probably have a couple I think of, but I say one of the favorites is John Wooden, who I mentioned wrote a book, called Wooden. Is one of the most influential books towards like my management style and the predictable revenue book. It's about basketball, but he was the winningest. I'm not even a fan of basketball, honestly, but great book. And he was the winningest college basketball coach ever at UCLA. So I still recommend that book. It's a little blue book called Wooden on Amazon.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we can ask a couple more from the YouTube and viewers elsewhere if there are a couple left, Colin.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'll plus one when Aaron recommended it a while ago, and it was a great read. And not a huge fan of basketball. Not that I dislike it, but I just don't follow it, and I still got tons of value out of the book and found it really engaging. We got one from Rodrigo. Most companies in Mexico haven't adopted the PR method. They still are old school with one rep doing all the steps, all the process. They haven't specialized yet. What would be the best way to help them make the transition?
Honestly, you have to get the leadership bought into the value of changing. So either one of these books, obviously I mentioned that the predictable revenue book's coming out in Spanish. I'm not sure I can pronounce it correctly. I don't know, Julia, maybe get some help. Or other people who have written or create content, third parties around like why this is the way to go. Because if the leadership isn't bought into it, they're not going to make the changes. And honestly, a lot of companies, they're just not going to change. It's just too much. It's just too much for them. And maybe they felt like they made so many changes in the last year, they can't do anything else. Or maybe there's just so much inertia, they can't change. But I will say that any company who, again, has followed the principles of sales specialization, which really isn't about having just SDR, prospectors and closers. It's really the idea of a sports team. Maybe this will help. Is there any sports team, whether you call it football or soccer, for example, would any coach go out into all the players and say, all right, all of you, I want you to all attack, and I want then all of you to defend? It wouldn't make any sense. So why on a sales team, we tell all the salespeople do all your own prospecting and all your own closing, and maybe even all, customer account management. So between things like the books or content, or maybe there's a metaphor like that to get it through to the executives that if they really want to get better results, they have to make this kind of change if it's in B2B. Like there are exceptions to, I'm sure, but in general, there really is nothing else that can make a sales team more effective than the specialization model. If you decide to do it and realize it can take, 6 months, again, it's not a 30-day change, but it can transform the sales team and business for the better when you go into it and you go wholeheartedly into it. So it's about people doing fewer things better is the basic principle to it. So Rodrigo, hope that helps.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you so much to all of you guys that joined us live here on the AMA. It's really, really wonderful to see faces here with us. It's really cool. And especially because you're coming from all corners of the globe. So thank you so much for joining us. Any of those questions that got missed, I know we did skip ahead through a couple of people who had a second question. Please join us on the Slack community. We've got a link that we'll put in the YouTube channel chat right now. So if you aren't in there because you're here with us in the Zoom, you can hop over there, click that link if you haven't already signed up to be part of our Slack community. And that way you can ask ask Aaron the rest. Well, you can ask Colin too if you want, but you want to ask Aaron the rest of the questions that you have that have not been answered yet, and he can answer them for you in there. But yeah, thank you so much to everybody. We are going to hop over into our break room now. So we'll actually leave a bunch of you guys who are in here live in this Zoom room. And that way, if Aaron has a couple more minutes to stick around, he can answer a couple more questions. But yeah, thanks again, Aaron, so much for the AMA. And thank you to all of you who joined us. And we will see you just in a second here. Live stream, we'll bring you with us. You guys in the Zoom, we'll leave you here.
Right on. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys.
I'll stick around for a couple more minutes.
All right, here we go. Follow me, YouTube.
All right,
Okay.
I think they're gone.
So we just shoot more questions, or who's late?
Yeah, I got another 4 minutes or so. So like R2, you were first up. If you got a second one to throw out there, and if, by the way, if anyone wants to throw something in the chat versus waiting to mention it, that's fine too.
Yeah, so I was planning to ask, like, okay, things like we are living in rapidly changing environment, of course, that's changing even faster every day. How would you summarize what are the learnings changed during the recent couple of years compared to your recent edition of your book? And then what do you think will be the future for email cold calling, like for the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be the same as the phone. Like every channel, let's start there, because the phone was the direct mail and the phone were dominant, and then they started to go down just because people are doing it, and then email came up and the dominant came down, and then LinkedIn came up. So every channel is more effective, then everyone piles in, it becomes more crowded, less effective, but it still works. So it's not that the channel goes away, you just have to kind of adapt your techniques to it, and then you add new channels. Okay, so it used to be the phone and email, and now it's the phone, email, LinkedIn, and next year might be the phone, email, LinkedIn, and whatever, X. So I think, again, let's say the pace of change, the speed of the information explosion is going up, which means the speed of, like, the rate of saturation goes up, how quickly things get saturated.
Mm-hmm.
Means like how the challenge of standing out in someone's inboxes gets harder, faster. So if you have some email technique that works, maybe that gets copied and circulated, and within, I don't know, I wouldn't even, it might have taken years before for some technique to kind of make its rounds and everyone's using it, so it stops working as well. And now it happens a lot faster, that copy paste.
Yeah.
So you just have to, the techniques, you can't rely on them. I mean, everything will stop working, so that you rely on your own kind of creativity, ability, like confidence that you can kind of figure things out, try new things, and like know the customer, and like navigate, find out ultimately what would be ways to get in touch with them.
Yeah, because like biggest challenge for us in Trust Mary has been really like to get our email operations working, that they are not going to spam, or they are not getting blocked, or that has been kind of the bigger challenge, instead of just it just doesn't happen that easily. Okay, you just start doing email. So there is actually quite a lot of learnings to be done before you actually get your messages read.
The world's only going to get more complicated.
Yeah.
I got one. So I think one other thing is, like, I really believe hyper specialization is still the way, which is people doing fewer things better, which means more teamwork, not doing things just because you can do them, but really focusing on what can you do best, and who else, whether on your team or consultants or outsourcers, who else can do things that you're just not, you shouldn't do, because it's just going to be an energy drain. So I'll do one more question if there is one. And we got a whole bunch of people from Spain, it's impressive. And I got other people I was just talking to from Spain and Barcelona, like some guys from Human Funnel, if you know them. And I got a friend of mine living in talking about maybe visiting Spain for vacation, but it's travel restrictions. So is there one last question?
So I wanted to ask, so where are you traveling next? Are you coming to, I know you had some visits in Lithuania as well. I didn't manage to participate, but I think due to COVID, probably it's going to slow down. But are you planning any pitching events, anything in the near future?
Yeah, well, I just agreed to my first like in-person talk in a long time. So because there's a group called Set Sales doing a sales conference in Copenhagen in November. So it's almost agreed to it just because like, all right, haven't been, Copenhagen's a great city. It's close by now. I mean, I'm in Edinburgh, so it's just short. And it's probably like a sales conference, good people. So that's the first one. We'll see after that. I'm optimistic it'll happen because it's November, but who knows, right? I wouldn't bet money on it, or maybe £5. So, well, my last words, I think, I mentioned, I think a lot about this kind of energy pandemic, that the toll of work, people are really starting to feel it. I don't think that's going to go away. Actually, I think it's going to get worse. Like a lot of the habits we've learned over many, many years just need to be rethought, rebroken, so that work can still better fit who we are as people and companies, and like align with more our values. Because you can get away, when people are in offices, you can get away with a lot of styles of work that aren't really very complementary to you as a person, because you're kind of with people and there's just stuff going on. But again, everyone going virtual in the pandemic really helped break that, or accelerate the need for people and the way we work to change. So again, I think about that a lot. It's like the next thing I think about creating content around is how to help primarily like executives first adapt, because I think they would help set the tone, an example for the rest of their companies and communities. But yeah, executives feel that energy drain. It's kind of like a grind, right? Just that exhaustion, that tiredness, the drag, just like everyone else. Well, great. Thanks for meeting you all. Thanks for showing up with your questions.